Hey guys, welcome back. On today's episode, we're going to take a look at how we can pass in data from outside our component inside the component. So let's take a look at an example. So here I have a simple component that lists my users in my database, and I have a simple search functionality. So this is a component we had on the previous episode, and I'll show you guys a simple demo. I can say, prof or Patricia, I think that's the name here. So I can search with this component. Now, one thing I would like to do is I would like to have a default search component, and I want to pass this from outside our component. So how can we go about doing that? Well, Livewire comes with a method called mount. So you can go ahead and define that on your component, public function mount. And this mount is basically your component constructor, okay? It performs the exact same functionality as having a constructor. So you can use it to basically set the properties on your component. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and define a search argument here and say this dot search equals search, just like this. Now obviously if I go and reload my component, we will start getting some error messages, which is totally okay. So now if we want to pass in this search to our component, we can go ahead on our wherever we are importing this component. So in this case, I'm doing it inside my welcome.blade.php, right? I'm including my component here. So in order to pass a variable, we can just go ahead and say search if you're using this syntax, and then set equal, and then pass it in here. So I'm going to say prof. Maybe by default, I want my search to be prof. And if you go ahead and reload the page, as you can see, our search by default became prof, right? Now, if you're using the other syntax, which is the blade directive Livewire, so it's users list, you can go ahead and pass an array as a second argument, and then define, your arguments here. So here I can say search equals prof. So let's go ahead and test this out. And this one also works. So you're free to use whichever you like. From now on, I'm probably going to start using the second syntax. And this is the one that is primarily used in the documentation. I don't think the documentation even mentions this first way. This is what was used, I believe, in Livewire 2. But in Livewire 3, this is probably the only one I have seen used in the documentation. So I will start using this syntax from now on. And again, as you can see, it is a bit shorter as well. So that's the way to go. But you can use the first one as well if you would like. So that's it. Now, one more thing you can do, guys, is if you would like to pass some PHP code here, you can. So if you just add a colon before your variable, and you can see VS Code kind of change the colors, whatever you put inside these quotation marks will be seen as PHP code. So what I can do is I can go ahead and say date, for example, this is a PHP function, and say date y, okay? And if I reload and check out our component, we get 2023. So adding the colon makes whatever you put inside these quotation marks to be treated as PHP code, okay? Again, if I remove the colon, double colon, and reload, we get the string value of date, y. So this is kind of a shortcut if you have a loop or something and you want to, for example, pass in a variable, you can just do $, whatever the variable name is, okay? So if you're using the colon. And that's the basics of passing data to your component. So here I'm going to change this back to prof. As you can see, it's working. Now, one more thing about this mount is it is only executed one time when your component is initialized. On basically updates or anything else that happens on your component, it won't run this mount anymore. So it's just kind of a one-time initializer method, similar to a constructor on a class. Now, if all you're doing is you basically just setting the properties on your component, like what I have here, you can basically go ahead and remove the mount. So there's a kind of a way to shorten this, and Livewire will go ahead and kind of run the mount for you. So this is kind of a shortcut if you have very simple components, but I'm going to keep it here in case, some people get confused about it. So that is it, guys, for setting data on your components or passing data into it. So for example, this can also be used if you have nested components. So from the parent component, you can pass in some data to your nested component. One thing you do need to realize is if you have two Livewire components nested, if the parent component changes, the child component will not change. So they are not reactive. This isn't like Vue.js or React. So you do need to keep that in mind. However, I will have a separate video about nesting and cover everything you need to about it and some gotchas that there are. But for now, the most common use cases is maybe you want to pass a default. Maybe you have an edit form. So you can go ahead and define, let's say, user ID, the ID of the user you want to edit, and then pass that in from outside your component. That's the most common use cases for it. Or you can just use the mount to load something from the database and set the initial value. But that's the basics of passing data to your components, guys. It's going to be very useful on the next project that we're going to build. So I thought it's important for you guys to know about passing data and also about the mount function. So if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section below, and I'll try to help you guys out. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Have a great day. Bye.